I always thought my life would unravel in some dramatic way. Screaming fight, shattered glass, a scene fit for reality TV. Instead, it started with the soft hiss of a steam wand and the smell of toasted espresso beans. Saturday. 2 p.m. My ritual. The cafe's big windows were letting in that late winter Portland light, the kind that makes everything look a little washed out, like the day hasn't decided if it wants to move forward or retreat. I was reviewing a presentation for Monday, half listening to the indie playlist humming overhead, when the chair across from me scraped lightly against the wood floor. I didn't look up at first. People sometimes hovered, looking for a table. But then the person sat down. Not hesitantly. Not apologetically. Like he had every right to be there. I lifted my eyes. Tall. Clean-shaven. Dark coat. Striking in a way that made me sit up a little straighter. And absolutely not someone I knew. "Alicia?" he asked, voice calm, almost gentle. My stomach tightened. "Do I know you?" "No," he said. "But I know your boyfriend." A weird chill prickled across my shoulders. "Okay." He folded his hands on the table like we were about to begin a business meeting. "His name is Joel. And he's been sleeping with my wife." Everything inside me went quiet, like someone hit mute on the world. Steam wand, gone. Chatter, gone. Music, gone. I stared at him, waiting for some hint of a joke. But his eyes stayed steady on mine, grounded, serious, strangely empathetic. "My name is Evan," he said. "I'm not here to cause a scene. I just thought you deserved the truth." My pulse thudded in my throat. I don't understand." "Why would you come to me?" "Because she won't tell you." And he definitely won't. He slid a small business card toward me. Not a dramatic envelope. No photos. Just a name. A number. A man who looked like he'd spent weeks deciding whether to do this. "I can show you proof if you need it." I didn't touch the card. Evan leaned back, studying me. Not pitying, almost assessing, like he was trying to understand my strength before I even remembered I had any. "And," he added softly, "if you want. I'd like to take you out tonight." My breath hitched. "Why?" His answer was immediate. "Because they've been controlling the narrative for long enough." Then, quieter, "and because maybe you deserve a night that isn't built around someone else's lies." I should have told him to leave. I should have been outraged. I should have been heartbroken. Instead, all I felt was a sharp, startling crack inside my chest, like a door opening. "Think about it," he said, rising. "Let's make them wonder where we are for once." He walked out, leaving me staring at the business card, my safe little world tilting off its axis. I always thought my life would unravel in some dramatic way. Screaming fight, shattered glass, a scene fit for reality TV. Instead, it started with the soft hiss of a steam wand and the smell of toasted espresso beans. Saturday. 2 p.m. My ritual. The cafe's big windows were letting in that late winter Portland light, the kind that makes everything look a little washed out, like the day hasn't decided if it wants to move forward or retreat. I was reviewing a presentation for Monday, half listening to the indie playlist humming overhead, when the chair across from me scraped lightly against the wood floor. I didn't look up at first. People sometimes hovered, looking for a table. But then the person sat down. Not hesitantly. Not apologetically. Like he had every right to be there. I lifted my eyes. Tall. Clean-shaven. Dark coat. Striking in a way that made me sit up a little straighter. And absolutely not someone I knew. "Alicia?" he asked, voice calm, almost gentle. My stomach tightened. Do I know you? No, he said. But I know your boyfriend. A weird chill prickled across my shoulders. Okay. He folded his hands on the table like we were about to begin a business meeting. His name is Joel. And he's been sleeping with my wife. Everything inside me went quiet, like someone hit mute on the world. Steam wand, gone. Chatter, gone. Music, gone. I stared at him, waiting for some hint of a joke. But his eyes stayed steady on mine, grounded, serious, strangely empathetic. My name is Evan, he said. I'm not here to cause a scene. I just thought you deserved the truth. My pulse thudded in my throat. I don't understand. Why would you come to me? Because she won't tell you. And he definitely won't. He slid a small business card toward me. Not a dramatic envelope. No photos. Just a name. A number. A man who looked like he'd spent weeks deciding whether to do this. I can show you proof if you need it. I didn't touch the card. Evan leaned back, studying me. Not pitying, almost assessing, like he was trying to understand my strength before I even remembered I had any. And, he added softly, if you want. I'd like to take you out tonight. My breath hitched. Why? His answer was immediate. Because they've been controlling the narrative for long enough. Then, quieter, and because maybe you deserve a night that isn't built around someone else's lies. I should have told him to leave. I should have been outraged. I should have been heartbroken. Instead, all I felt was a sharp, startling crack inside my chest, like a door opening. Think about it, he said, rising. Let's make them wonder where we are for once. He walked out, leaving me staring at the business card, my safe little world tilting off its axis. The walk home took 15 minutes. Usually it soothed me, the tree-lined streets, the murals, the little boutiques with handmade candles and chunky sweaters. I'd built a life here. A safe life, with routines and good credit and predictable weekends. That was supposed to mean something. By the time I climbed the stairs to our apartment, my chest felt tight. Our place was neat in the way that comes from habit, not care. Light gray sofa from West Elm. Bookshelf I'd assembled myself while Joel supervised from the couch. Photos from a trip we took 2 years ago, him smiling obligingly, me holding the camera at arm's length. I dropped my bag by the door and stood still. Really still. For the first time, the apartment looked staged. Like a rental. Like something I was maintaining, not living in. Joel always said he loved that I was organized, that I kept things running smoothly. But the longer I looked around, the more I realized, I'd decorated our home to feel like stability. Because stability was easier than confronting how stagnant everything had become. I sank onto the sofa, rubbing my temples. We'd been together 3 years. Long enough to form patterns. Long enough for love to fade into something gentler, and, in our case, duller. Long enough for me to forget I once wanted more than comfortable. I used to dream about starting my own consulting firm. A boutique agency with creative clients and flexible hours. I wanted to travel. To write articles that people actually cared about. To live a life that felt like mine. But for the last 2 years, my dreams had been carefully folded and tucked behind the false wall of someday. Because Joel liked routine. Joel liked predictability. Joel liked, well, he liked a version of me who didn't disrupt anything. Alicia the reliable. Alicia the safe. Alicia the one who doesn't ask for too much. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Who exactly had I become to make this relationship work? Maybe that's why my Saturdays at the café meant so much. It wasn't just a latte and an hour alone. It was the one part of my week that felt untouched by compromise. The cafe had become my sanctuary the same way other people clung to church or yoga or long runs by the river. Same time, same table, same drink. A habit, yes. But also the one place I felt like myself, quietly ambitious, observant, creative. Evan didn't know any of that, yet somehow, he'd chosen that exact moment to step into my routine and blow everything open. I closed my eyes. His face flashed behind my eyelids, calm, composed, strangely kind for someone delivering a detonator. Why me? Why now? And why the hell invite me out tonight? I stood abruptly and went to the kitchen, needing something to do, even if it was just rinsing an already clean mug. That was when I noticed Joel's cologne lingering in the air, a sharp, woodsy scent he claimed he wore for work because it made him feel put together. He'd left early that morning, something about a gym session and brunch with coworkers. Lately, he had a lot of coworker brunches. I swallowed hard. I opened the fridge. Half a takeout container. A lonely yogurt. A bottle of wine I'd been saving but never uncorked because Joel didn't like whites. Our life was full of little compromises like that. Not dramatic, not cruel, just small erosions. One preference at a time. One unfinished dream at a time. Joel wasn't a villain, not in the cinematic sense. He wasn't explosive or cruel or openly manipulative. It was worse, he was passive. Thoughtless. Comfortable with me being the supporting character in our shared script. He liked that I handled the bills, the calendar, the holiday planning, the emotional labor. He liked that I didn't question his late nights. He liked that I took his word at face value. Looking back, I couldn't pinpoint when our relationship shifted from building a life to maintaining the facade of one. Maybe I didn't want to see the shift. Maybe I didn't want to admit I'd chosen comfort over authenticity. And now here I was, holding the possibility that my safe life wasn't safe at all. It was built on lies someone else had crafted behind my back. A sharp, fragile ache pressed against my ribs. I wasn't angry yet. Mostly, I was scared, of what I'd find, of what it would mean, of who I'd become if the story I'd been living wasn't real. I drifted through the apartment, touching things as if they'd changed texture in the last hour. The framed print above the bed Joel said was too colorful. The throw pillows he said were too feminine. The books he teased me for reading because marketing philosophy isn't real philosophy. I used to push back. Then I stopped. Because it was easier. A knock on the door jolted me back into my body. I froze. But it wasn't Joel. Just a package on the doormat. Still, my heart hammered too fast. Something inside me was shifting. Like the careful scaffolding I'd built was finally showing its cracks. I picked up my phone. Opened our shared calendar. Scrolled through Joel's upcoming work commitments. One stood out, Thursday, off-site team retreat. But I remembered him saying he didn't know the dates yet. A chill slid down my spine. I closed the calendar. My hands weren't shaking, but they felt empty. Expectant. Evan had slid a fault line into my life. Now everything was starting to split. I didn't open Evan's business card again, not yet. It felt radioactive, like touching it would make everything real before I was ready. Instead, I wandered the apartment with the disoriented feeling you get waking from a dream you're not sure was a nightmare or a revelation. It was so quiet. Not peaceful, vacant. Like the air itself was holding its breath. I sat on the edge of the bed I shared with Joel. The sheets were neatly made, corners tucked the way he liked. That thought made my throat tighten unexpectedly. When had I stopped caring about what I liked? When had I become someone who tailored herself around another person's preferences so automatically that I didn't even notice anymore? My eyes drifted to his nightstand. Books he never finished. His smartwatch charger. A half-used bottle of the cologne he bought after Diana, though I didn't know her name then, had supposedly complimented him at a networking mixer. I remember teasing him about it. He'd shrugged, saying it was nice to be noticed sometimes. Nice to be noticed. My stomach rolled. I realized, then, that I couldn't remember the last time he had really looked at me. Not glance at, not move around in the same space. Really seen me. Asked a question that went deeper than logistics. Touched me without it feeling like a routine. I thought about our early days. How he used to bring me pastries from the bakery near his old apartment because he remembered I liked almond croissants. How we used to stay up until 2 a.m. talking about work, childhood memories, ridiculous dreams. How he used to text me just to say he missed me. I hadn't gotten a "miss you" text in over a year. Maybe more. When had we stopped laughing? When had we stopped trying? When had I convinced myself that cooling down was normal, that distance was adulthood, that numbness was just the cost of long-term love? A heat rose in my chest, shame, maybe, or grief, or something brittle and sharp. And under that heat, something else flickered, the quiet awareness that I'd been lonely for far longer than I'd been betrayed. The betrayal was just the part one couldn't ignore anymore. I stood and walked to the living room. Joel's gym bag was tossed by the door. He always left it there, even though we'd agreed to keep the entryway clear. I used to move it without thinking. 100 little chores he never noticed. 100 little ways I kept our life smooth so he never had to lift a finger. He once told a friend at dinner, "Alicia keeps everything running." I remember smiling, thinking it was a compliment. But now, hearing Evan's words echo in my head, he says you don't notice anything. It sounded more like, she doesn't question me. She doesn't catch on. She's easy. A cold, shaky breath left me. I knew Joel didn't value me the way I deserved. But hearing that he told another woman, a married woman he was sleeping with, that deceiving me was too easy, that cut deeper than I expected. Not because he cheated, but because he thought so little of me. The hurt wasn't explosive, it was quiet, like turning around and realizing the house you live in has been rotting slowly for years. I opened the fridge again, staring at the same lonely items. Each one was another reminder of how small I'd made myself. I bought foods he liked. I stopped experimenting with recipes because he said he didn't like weird ingredients. I once suggested we try a new restaurant downtown. He'd shrugged and said he preferred the usual spot. We didn't go. I had become the usual spot. Predictable. Convenient. Background. My phone buzzed suddenly, jolting me. A text from Joel, running late, might grab dinner with the guys. A familiar message. Almost comfortingly predictable. Except now the words felt slimy, threaded with lies. How many times had I smiled and typed back "sounds good"? Love you while he was with someone else's wife? I didn't respond. I set the phone face down on the counter. I told myself I wouldn't jump to conclusions. I needed facts. Evidence. Something undeniable before I became the kind of woman who snooped. Except, deep down, some part of me already knew I wasn't snooping. I was waking up. I walked to his desk in the corner of the living room. His laptop sat closed, charger plugged in, like a loaded gun that had been left out in the open. My heart thudded. My hands buzzed with adrenaline. I didn't know his password. But I knew Joel. I typed our anniversary date. Denied. His childhood dog's name. Denied. Then I typed the name of his favorite basketball team. It opened instantly. My knees nearly buckled. His desktop was cluttered. he was always messy with digital things. Files everywhere, folders labeled vaguely, tabs left open. My eyes scanned the screen, half hoping to find nothing. But it took less than 10 seconds. An email draft addressed to D, unsent, but saved. Can't stay long Thursday. She's starting to ask questions. My throat tightened painfully. She. That was me. I clicked. The thread opened. Dozens of emails. Some short. Some intimate. Some explicit. Her signature at the bottom, Diana. I kept reading even though each line scraped across my chest like a blade. She won't suspect anything. She's too trusting. I wish we could get away again. The hotel last month was perfect. I'm going to tell her I'm at a work retreat. I need you. And then, the one that made everything inside me go still. Sometimes I think she doesn't really know who I am. Doesn't even see me. Maybe that's why it's so easy. Easy. There it was again. The word that burned. I paused on a photo attachment. My hands trembled as I opened it. A picture of Diana, smiling, posing in a hotel mirror. A familiar cologne bottle on the counter beside her. His cologne. Something unexpected washed over me, not rage, not heartbreak. Relief. A deep, exhaling, terrifying relief. My brain whispered, "You're not crazy. You're not imagining the distance. You weren't asking for too much. You were asking the wrong person." I closed the laptop softly, like sealing a coffin. For the first time in years, I felt awake. Raw, yes. But awake. I walked to the bedroom closet and pushed aside my usual clothes. Jeans. Work blouses. Soft sweaters Joel said he liked. On the far right, still in its plastic wrap, hung a dress I bought months ago, a bold, deep red slip dress with a low back. I'd loved it the moment I tried it on, but Joel had frowned slightly, saying it felt a little much for you. I had never worn it. I reached out and let my fingers trace the silky fabric. Tonight, I thought, a spark igniting in my chest. Tonight, I choose myself. My phone buzzed again. A new message from an unknown number. Still on for tonight if you want to claim a little of your life back. Evan, my breath wavered, but something inside me straightened, steady, decisive, uncontrollably honest. Evan wasn't the danger. My own denial had been. I typed back one word before I could talk myself out of it, yes. And as soon as I hit send, it felt like the first true thing I'd done in a very long time. I didn't realize how fast my heart was beating until I stepped into the shower. The water hit my skin, hot and sharp, but my mind was elsewhere, cycling through every shift in expression Joel had ever made, every excuse, every half-smile at his phone. All the moments that I'd brushed aside because I trusted him. Because trusting him felt easier than confronting what my intuition had been whispering for months. I tilted my head back, letting the water run over my face. Tonight. I was actually going out tonight. With the husband of the woman my boyfriend was sleeping with. It sounded insane, like a bad romantic thriller. But beneath the shock, a strange clarity pulsed inside me. I stepped out of the shower and wrapped myself in a towel. Steam blurred the edges of the bathroom, making everything look softer, dreamlike. But my reflection in the mirror was sharp, eyes wide, jaw set, shoulders squared in a way I hadn't seen in ages. I dried my hair, applied makeup with a steadiness that surprised me, and finally reached for the red dress. The moment I slipped it on, something shifted. The fabric hugged my waist, my back, my hips, reminding me that I had a body, a presence, a life outside the tiny emotional cage I'd built with Joel. I zipped it up and stepped back from the mirror. I looked alive. Not sexy for anyone else. Not dressed up for a date. Alive for myself. My phone buzzed. I'll pick you up at 8. Dress however makes you feel powerful. Evan. I smiled, small but real. Already doing that, I whispered to no one. The minutes crawled until 8. When the knock finally came, it startled me even though I'd been listening for it. I grabbed my jacket, slipped into heels, and opened the door. Evan stood there in a charcoal coat and dark button-up, looking at me with an expression that paused just slightly, something like recognition, like he saw the shift in me. "Wow," he said softly. "You look like a woman who made a decision today." I held his gaze. "I did." He nodded once, approvingly, before stepping aside to let me lock the door behind me. When I turned back, he offered his arm, old-fashioned, respectful. I hesitated for a fraction of a second before taking it. Not because I needed support. Because it felt symbolic. Two betrayed people choosing forward momentum. His car was sleek but understated. The city lights blurred past as we drove, neither of us speaking at first. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, it was anticipatory. "Are you okay?" he asked eventually, glancing over briefly. I thought about lying. Saying I was fine. But dishonesty had already cost me too much. "No," I said. "But I'm awake." He exhaled in something like agreement. "That's how it starts." I turned toward him. "How long have you known?" His jaw shifted. 3 months. I found messages on Diana's tablet. At first I thought it was just flirting, emotional cheating. But then I found hotel receipts. A reservation under her name but charged to his card. My hands tightened in my lap. "Why didn't you confront them?" I tried. His voice roughened slightly. "She told me I was imagining things. That I was being insecure. Then she started locking her phone, working late, traveling more." He paused. I realized I'd become the background issue she didn't want to deal with. It was unnerving how similar our stories were, two lives unraveling in parallel without ever intersecting until now. "I'm sorry," I said quietly. He looked at me then, really looked. "I'm sorry too. You didn't deserve this." The restaurant was tucked into a quiet block of downtown, elegant without being pretentious. Candlelight flickered on every table. The host greeted Evan by name, and a small part of me wondered if he brought clients here. If this was familiar territory. But as he rested a hand lightly at my back, guiding me to our table, I felt something steady. This wasn't a date. But it wasn't nothing either. We sat near a large window overlooking the street. Soft jazz floated through the air. The lighting was low enough to make everything feel softened, like the world had exhaled. Evan ordered a bottle of wine, looking to me with a silent question before choosing a varietal. A small detail, but Joel never asked my preference. While we waited, he said, "I didn't want to do this alone tonight. The truth eats at you differently when you don't have anyone who understands." I nodded. I didn't have anyone I could tell. I mean, I have friends, coworkers, but I would have had to defend myself before they even believed me. They all think Joel's perfect. "People love a polished facade," Evan said. "But you and I? We saw the cracks firsthand." The wine arrived. I took a sip, letting the warmth spread through me, grounding me. Evan watched me gently, giving me space. "How long have you been unhappy?" he asked, not prying, genuinely curious. I let the question settle before answering. "A while," I admitted. I think I shrank myself to fit his comfort zone. And every time I gave up a little dream, or lowered an expectation, I told myself it was maturity. Compromise. Love. And now? And now it feels like I spent 3 years rearranging myself to be someone who wouldn't make him leave. I swallowed. Except he left anyway. Emotionally, if not physically. Evan's eyes softened. That takes courage to say. I gave a small laugh. It took you sitting across from me in a coffee shop with a truth bomb. To be fair, he said with a faint smile, you took it better than I expected. I raised a brow. How do most people react when you tell them their partner is cheating with your spouse? He leaned back, considering. I wouldn't know. You're the first. I blinked. Wait, you've never done anything like this before? He shook his head. I'm not a vigilante messenger. But she kept lying. He kept lying. And I realized, she was counting on me to stay quiet. He was counting on you to stay comfortable. I thought maybe it was time someone changed the pattern. Something unknotted inside my chest. Thank you, I said softly. For telling me. He didn't smile. But something in his expression warmed. You deserved the truth. Dinner moved slowly, not rushed or strained. We talked about work, travel goals, the gap between who we were and who we wanted to be. Not romantically charged, just honest. I found myself relaxing into the conversation, shedding layers of numbness I didn't even realize I'd been carrying. After dessert, Evan hesitated, then asked, do you like jazz? I lifted a shoulder. I don't know. I've never really gone. His brow rose slightly. Never? Joel wasn't into live music. Too chaotic for him. Evan gave me a look that was equal parts sympathetic and incredulous. Then let's fix that. The jazz club was only a short walk away, tucked behind an unassuming door with a neon sign shaped like a trumpet. Inside, the lighting was low, the air warm, the room intimate. The band on stage played with an ease that came from years of muscle memory. Notes curved through the space like smoke. We sat close enough to feel the vibrations of the bass under our feet. I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the sound move through me. And I felt something I hadn't felt in years, myself. Not Joel's girlfriend. Not the woman who kept everything together. Just a person. A woman. Breathing. Listening. Wanting. Evan leaned in slightly so I could hear him over the music. Beautiful, isn't it? I opened my eyes. Yeah. It is. He wasn't looking at the band. He was looking at me. Not in a hungry way. Not in a pitying way. Just, present. Witnessing. My breath caught. Not because I felt something romantic, not yet. But because I realized what it felt like to be seen. The rest of the night unfolded in a soft, surreal rhythm. When we eventually walked back to his car, the city air was crisp, and distant traffic hummed like background music. Evan stopped beside the passenger door, turning to me. You're not alone in this, Alicia. Whatever you decide, whatever comes next, you have choices. More than you've been allowed to believe. A lump formed in my throat. Thank you. For tonight. For everything. He nodded once. We'll talk tomorrow. After you get some sleep. I hesitated. And after I deal with Joel. His gaze held mine, steady and unflinching. You don't owe him softness. Only honesty. I breathed out slowly. I know. When he drove me home, he didn't touch me. Didn't lean in. Didn't blur any lines. But as I stepped out of the car, he said quietly, if you need backup tomorrow, call me. I nodded. Then he added, almost as an afterthought, yet somehow more grounding than anything else that night. "You deserved better long before either of us found out." I watched his car disappear into the streetlights before turning toward my building. Inside my apartment, everything looked the same as when I left. But I wasn't. I locked the door behind me, kicked off my shoes, and stood in the middle of the living room, the place where I had shrunk myself over and over until I barely recognized the woman in my own reflection. Tonight cracked something open. Tomorrow, I would break it the rest of the way. I didn't sleep. Not really. I lay in bed wearing an oversized t-shirt, staring at the ceiling as the city hummed faintly outside the window. Every time I closed my eyes, the night replayed itself: the restaurant, the jazz club, Evan's steady voice telling me I had choices. His face when he said I deserved better. But the thing that kept circling in my mind wasn't him. It wasn't even Joel. It was the relief. I expected to be gutted, shattered, undone by the discovery of the affair. Some part of me imagined a Hollywood-style breakdown, crying on the bathroom floor, clutching my chest dramatically, questioning my worth. But instead, I felt something entirely different, something almost shameful to admit. Freedom. Real, quiet, terrifying freedom. It settled into my bones like truth. Around 3 a.m., I rolled onto my side and stared at the soft glow of the streetlight filtering through the blinds. I whispered it aloud, just to see how it sounded: "I'm free." The words didn't hurt. They felt accurate. All this time, I hadn't been clinging to Joel because I loved him deeply. I'd been clinging to the idea of him. The idea of partnership. The idea of security. Of normalcy. Of stability. But that wasn't love. That was fear disguised as practicality. I realized something then, something startling, almost laughably obvious in retrospect. The affair wasn't the destruction of my life. It was the exit door I'd needed but never had the courage to build. If Joel hadn't betrayed me, I might have stayed forever. I might have continued shrinking my dreams. Compromising my desires. Convincing myself that affectionless weeks and lukewarm conversations were all I should expect from adulthood. I might have wasted years believing good enough was the best I could hope for. My chest tightened, not with sadness, but with grief for the version of myself who believed settling was the only responsible choice. I sat up, running a hand through my hair. The more I thought about it, the more a strange calmness settled over me. I could leave. I could actually leave. Not in a blaze of fury, not in a dramatic explosion, but in a clear, steady movement towards something bigger. The question wasn't can I? It was why haven't I? And the answer hit me with breathtaking clarity: I hadn't been choosing Joel. I'd been avoiding choosing myself. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message from Evan, sent at 7:12 a.m. "Did you sleep? If not, that's normal. Call me if you need to. No pressure." I smiled faintly. He had an uncanny way of saying exactly what I didn't realize I needed to hear. I typed back, "Not really. But I'm okay." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then appeared again. "You sounded different last night. Lighter. I think you already know what you're going to do." I stared at his words, the truth of them settling into my stomach. Because I did know. I just hadn't admitted it aloud yet. "Yes," I typed. "I know." Another bubble appeared. "Good. Then don't wait for a perfect moment. There isn't one." I exhaled, long and slow. For the first time since yesterday afternoon, the fear lifted enough for me to see the shape of something new. Not a rebound romance. Not revenge. Something more radical. My own life. My own terms. I got out of bed, crossed the room, and pulled open the blinds. The morning light spilled into the apartment, soft but insistent, brushing over everything like a reminder that time moves forward whether you're ready or not. I thought about Joel's words in those emails. She doesn't know anything. She won't ask questions. It's too easy. He didn't just cheat on me. He minimized me. He underestimated me. He built a version of me that required constant self-erasure. And somehow, I had stepped into that version and worn it like a costume. Not anymore. A surprising stillness filled my chest. Not numbness. Not denial. Choice. I picked up my phone again, but not to text Evan. I opened my notes app and typed one line at the top of a new page: I'm leaving today. Then beneath it: and I'm choosing myself. The words were simple. But they shook me in a way nothing else had. Not because they felt risky. But because, for the first time in years, they felt true. I put the phone down and stood taller, the morning light warming my bare feet on the floor. The affair wasn't the twist. The twist was that I wasn't broken. I was finally, ready to live a life that belonged to me. Joel came home around 9 in the morning, earlier than usual for a Saturday gym and brunch day. I heard his keys jingle in the lock while I was in the kitchen pouring coffee I didn't actually feel like drinking. My pulse picked up, but not from fear. More like readiness. He walked in wearing joggers and a fitted hoodie, hair damp from a shower he definitely hadn't taken here. He looked surprised to see me dressed, awake, alert. "Hey," he said casually, dropping his gym bag in the same spot near the door where he always left it. "You're up early." I leaned against the counter, studying him. It was incredible how different he looked now that I knew. Not monstrous, just small. Smaller than I'd allowed myself to see. "Where were you?" I asked. He blinked. "The gym, I told you." I nodded slowly. "And after that?" He hesitated just long enough to confirm everything. "Brunch. With the guys." I wish I could say it hurt to hear him lie so easily. But it didn't. It only crystallized my decision. "We need to talk," I said. Joel froze. It was subtle, shoulders tensing, jaw tightening, but I'd lived with him long enough to spot every micro-expression he thought he hid. "Okay," he said cautiously. "About what?" I didn't drag it out. I didn't tremble or cry or build up to it. "I know about Diana." His whole face shifted, shock, then calculation, then a flicker of annoyance that he didn't bother disguising. "What are you talking about?" he asked, attempting confusion. I kept my voice even. "Your emails. The hotel bookings. The messages about how easy it is to lie to me." Color drained from his face. "Alicia, no, you're misunderstanding. Someone must have shown you something out of context." "Who told you this?" "That doesn't matter." "It matters," he insisted, stepping closer. "Because someone is lying to you. And you're just believing them? Without talking to me first?" I gave a small, humorless laugh. "Joel, I saw your messages. You wrote them. To her." He opened and closed his mouth like his brain was flipping through excuses too fast to land on one. "It's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think." "Alicia, come on." His voice softened in that patronizing way he used when he wanted to calm me before steering the conversation back to his comfort. "We've been stressed. Things have been off. We haven't been connecting. I didn't know how to talk to you about it." I stared at him, stunned by how predictable the script was. "So you talked to someone else?" I asked. He winced, which was almost satisfying. "I made a mistake. A stupid mistake. But it's not serious." I was going to end it. I tilted my head. Before or after the next hotel night? His eyes hardened. I don't know who got into my email, but this is really unfair. Stop, I said quietly. He went silent. I'm not arguing with you. I'm not fighting you. I'm not trying to extract apologies or reasons. I set my coffee down. I'm done. That word seemed to hit him harder than any accusation. Done? He repeated, voice cracking with disbelieving desperation. You're just ending things? You ended things a long time ago, I said. You just didn't tell me. His chest rose and fell too fast. Ollie, we can fix this. We can go to therapy, take a break, talk it out, whatever you want. Please. Don't do something drastic. I looked at him for what felt like the first time in years. You didn't want me, I said simply. You wanted someone easy. His face twisted, guilt, denial, panic. That's not fair. It's the truth. He reached for my hand. I stepped back. That was when he shifted tactics. His shoulders straightened, and he exhaled sharply through his nose. You know what? Maybe this is partly your fault, he said. Ah. There it was. The turn. You've been distant, he continued. You've been wrapped up in work, barely paying attention to us. I didn't feel wanted either. I didn't feel, he gestured vaguely. Chosen. I stared at him, stunned by the audacity. I've been distant because you shut down every single attempt I made to reach you, I said. Because you acted annoyed every time I asked for connection. Because you trained me to stop needing anything from you. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. I'm moving out, I said. Today. He blinked rapidly. You can't just, where will you go? I've already got some ideas. It wasn't exactly true, I hadn't planned the logistics. But I wasn't bluffing. I felt clearer than I had in years. Ollie, please, he whispered, voice cracking now. Let's talk about this. Like adults. Don't throw away everything we built. I looked around the apartment. Everything I built. I'm not throwing anything away, I said softly. I'm walking away from what already crumbled. He lowered himself onto the couch like his legs couldn't hold him up. He pressed his palms to his eyes. I didn't think you'd leave, he murmured. I thought we were solid. You thought I'd stay no matter what. Silence stretched between us, heavy, final, necessary. I grabbed my coat, my bag, and the small overnight suitcase we kept in the closet. I tossed in essentials without overthinking: toothbrush, jeans, laptop, chargers, a few tops, makeup bag. Joel watched helplessly. Where are you going? Somewhere that isn't here. That doesn't make sense. It makes perfect sense, I said. You underestimated me. You shouldn't have. He stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time, not as a background character, not as a convenience. As a person. A woman standing fully in her clarity. And that was the twist I hadn't anticipated. He didn't break me. He woke me. I zipped my suitcase. I'll come back for the rest later, I said. Preferably when you're not home. He swallowed hard. Is someone else telling you to do this? Yes, I said honestly. Me. His face crumpled. Alicia. But I was already at the door. Before I walked out, I paused, turned to him, and said the last words he'd hear from me for a long time. You don't get to rewrite this. I'm not leaving because you cheated. I'm leaving because I'm finally listening to myself. His lips parted like he wanted to argue, but no words came. I stepped outside and let the door click softly behind me. In the hallway, alone, I pulled out my phone. A new message from Evan was waiting. If you're out, meet me later. We should discuss next steps, for both of us. Next steps. For both of us. I took a breath that felt deeper than anything I'd taken in years. On my way, I typed. And for the first time, it wasn't running from something. It was running toward my life. The restaurant Evan chose for the confrontation was intentionally neutral, one of those polished, slightly too formal places where nobody dares raise their voice. Everything was beige, beige walls, beige tablecloths, beige smiles from the hosts. A perfect stage for quiet devastation. I arrived first. Evan stood when he saw me, his presence steady, grounding in a way I hadn't expected. He didn't touch me, but the look he gave me, assessing, concerned, proud, felt like a hand on the center of my back. You okay? He asked. I nodded. I left. A flicker of something, relief? Admiration? Passed through his eyes. Good. Then today isn't about survival. It's about closure. We sat. The server poured water. The clink of ice sounded too loud in the quiet room. Then, at 6:14 p.m. on the dot, the cheaters walked in. Joel looked pale, exhausted, wounded in the way of a man who'd never expected consequences. Diana, on the other hand, wore thick sunglasses even though the light was dim, and a scarf that felt a little too dramatic for spring. She hesitated when she saw us, her posture stiffening before she reluctantly followed Joel to the table. They sat across from us like a pair of strangers forced to share a taxi. No one spoke for a breath. 2 breaths. Then Diana offered a brittle smile. This feels unnecessary. I looked at Evan. He looked at me. And something aligned silently between us. We were done letting them shape the narrative. I leaned forward. We're here to make sure the two of you don't get to rewrite what happened. Joel exhaled sharply, already defensive. Alicia, come on. This isn't, it is, I cut in. You cheated. Repeatedly. And you lied to both of us. Repeatedly. We're not debating that. His mouth snapped shut. Evan's voice entered the space calm as steel. We aren't here for apologies. Or justifications. We're here to name the reality, so none of us walk away confused about what we lived through. Diana scoffed. Reality? Please. Things were complicated. No, Evan said, eyes locked on her. They were simple. You chose deception over leaving. You chose convenience over honesty. You built something on hollow ground and pretended it was stable. The table went silent again. Joel shifted, looking uncomfortable. Ollie, I told you, I made a mistake. A stupid one. I was confused. Nothing about it was serious. I felt the words hit me, bounce off, and fall uselessly to the floor. You told her it wasn't serious, I said, voice low but unwavering. But I read your messages. I saw how you talked about me, like I was a blind obstacle. Like I didn't matter. His throat bobbed. That's not what I meant. I was venting. You know how people exaggerate when they're frustrated. You humiliated me behind my back, I said. And you underestimated me in the process. Evan watched him with a level, unsettling stillness. You told her husband, he said to Joel, that deceiving her was easy. That she never questions anything. That she doesn't know who you really are. His voice didn't rise, but it chilled the air between us. You told me she was background noise. Joel's face flushed. I didn't mean, you meant every word, Evan said, not raising his voice, not needing to. And that's the truth you live with now. Diana turned her gaze to me, her tone clipped. Look, Alicia. I'm sorry if you got hurt. If? I asked. If? Her jaw tightened. I didn't plan any of this. I didn't mean for anyone to get caught up in it. Evan let out a breath that was almost a laugh, dark, disbelieving. You didn't mean for anyone to get hurt, including yourself. But you hurt everyone anyway. She flinched. I felt something loosen in my chest. A final knot untying. I'm not here to attack you, I said to Diana. I don't care about the excuses. But I want you to know something, both of you. I looked between them. You didn't break me. You didn't ruin my life. You held up a mirror, and I finally saw who I'd become. Joel's expression softened, surprised by the shift in tone. Ollie, and I didn't like her, I continued. Not because of anything you did. Because of what I buried. Because of what I gave up to make us work. Joel's face crumpled. I'm sorry. I believe you, I said. But it doesn't change anything. Beside me, Evan nodded slightly in approval. Not encouragement, recognition. Diana's composure cracked for the first time. She looked at Evan. What do you want from me? What does this accomplish? It frees us, Evan said. All of us. Even you. Her mouth tightened. She didn't understand, or she didn't want to. Joel reached across the table as if to touch my hand. I didn't move, but he stopped before making contact. Can't we talk privately? He asked softly. Just us? We had something good once. We had potential, I said. But neither of us watered it. You found someone who made things easier. I found out how small I'd made myself. We're both free now. He swallowed hard. Do you love him? He blurted suddenly, nodding at Evan. The question stunned everyone. Evan's breath hitched, barely noticeable, but present. I didn't look away from Joel. I don't belong to you anymore. That's all you need to know. He leaned back, wounded in a way that finally mirrored reality. We stood to leave. No dramatic exit. No slammed fists or thrown drinks. Just a quiet, unanimous understanding that the script had ended. Outside, the cool air felt cleansing. Evan and I stood on the sidewalk facing the slow-moving river of headlights. You did well, he said. So did you. For a moment, neither of us moved. The hum of the city wrapped around us, alive, indifferent, full of possibility. What now? I asked softly. Evan turned to me, eyes deep and unreadable for a moment. Then something softened. Now, he said, stepping closer, we stopped looking backward. I felt the gravity between us, not rushed, not confusing, not rebound. Something slow burning, steady, uncoiling itself in the space where pain used to live. He touched my cheek gently, giving me the chance to pull away. I didn't. The first kiss was soft, gentle, exploratory, asking rather than taking. When he pulled back, I felt breathless, not from shock but from recognition. Something inside me whispered, this is what presence feels like. Evan exhaled, his forehead resting against mine. Whatever happens from here, he said quietly, we build it honestly. Slowly, I added. Slowly, he agreed. The night didn't end with fireworks. It ended with clarity. We walked toward the parking lot hand in hand, not claiming each other, but choosing the same direction. Behind us, the restaurant lights dimmed. Ahead, the whole city opened. 6 months later, I woke to sunlight spilling across my new apartment, my apartment. A bright, airy studio overlooking the river, where the skyline looked different every morning depending on the weather and my mood. Plants crowded the windowsill, thriving in ways I never could in my old life. Books stacked on the floor waited for me to read them, not for someone else's approval. My small desk was covered in notes and client proposals. My client proposals. The consulting firm I'd dreamed of for years, half-whispered ideas I tucked away during my relationship with Joel, now lived on actual letterheads, complete with a growing list of local businesses who trusted me. I worked my own hours. I chose my projects. I made less money than at the agency, at least for now, but every dollar felt like oxygen. Some mornings, I wrote articles about reinvention, little essays on boundaries, self-worth, listening to intuition. People actually read them. Some sent messages saying my words helped them make decisions they'd been afraid to face. Sometimes I wrote those articles for others. Sometimes I wrote them for the woman I used to be. I stretched, reached for my phone, and saw a message waiting. Coffee on the balcony? I'm downstairs. I smiled, warmth blooming through me. I slipped into a sweater, padded barefoot to the door, and buzzed him in. Evan appeared 2 minutes later, carrying a paper bag that smelled like fresh pastries and 2 lattes from the café where this entire story began. He kissed me softly before stepping inside, familiar, steady, but never entitled. Brought breakfast, he said. Figured we could watch the river wake up. We walked to the balcony and sat side by side. The morning was crisp, the water shimmering under the first touch of sunlight. He looked lighter too. The divorce was finalized months ago. The house he once shared with Diana was sold. He'd moved into a smaller place closer to downtown, more suited to the man he actually was, not the one he tried to be in a failing marriage. He started taking on fewer work obligations and more personal ones, volunteering, hiking, learning to cook something other than pasta. We built whatever we had slowly, gently, with room to breathe. No urgency. No fear. Just communication and curiosity and the quiet understanding that we'd met at the exact moment our lives cracked open. I bit into a warm croissant, flakes scattering onto my sweater. I have a new client meeting today, I said. They want a full rebrand. Evan grinned. You're unstoppable. I looked out over the river, the city stretching wide and alive beyond it. Funny how everything fell apart, and somehow I ended up here. He reached for my hand. Not somehow. You chose this. I squeezed his fingers. Yeah. I guess I did. We sat in silence, comfortable and full, watching sunlight spill across the skyline. 6 months ago, I would have never believed that heartbreak could clear space for something better, not a replacement relationship, not revenge, but a whole new version of myself. Joel and Diana were ghost figures now. I heard through friends of friends that things between them didn't last. 2 people who lied as a habit eventually couldn't tell truth from manipulation, even with each other. There were job consequences, social fallout, messy finances. I didn't take pleasure in it, but it felt like the universe balancing its scales. They were background characters now. My life was the story I finally let myself write. As the sun rose higher, Evan brushed his thumb over my knuckles, gentle and assured. Do you ever think about how it started? He asked. I laughed softly. All the time. A stranger sitting at your café table, he said. And ruining my latte, I added. And handing you your life back, he said quietly. I turned to him, eyes warming. We handed our own lives back. You just nudged the door open. He leaned in, kissed me in that slow, certain way that never demanded more than I offered. When he pulled back, the city glowed beneath us, wide, open, full of promise. I rested my head on his shoulder. I'll never shrink myself again, I whispered. And I meant it. If you liked this story, feel free to subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next one.